Hi, Rich Leiter here. Welcome to my channel, renamed The Naked Booktuber. Okay, so I just finished reading The Mayor of Casterbridge by Thomas Hardy about 10 minutes ago. And I'm going to just give you my initial impressions of it. I haven't done any research on it. I haven't listened to any other book reviews on YouTube, on the internet. I just want to give you my own gut impressions about it, my own thoughts, and obviously this is not going to be an exhaustive book review. I'm probably going to miss a lot of things in retrospect, but I just want to share with you my gut reaction. So anyway, The Mayor of Casterbridge was a book that I had high hopes for. I'd already read Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Jude the Obscure. And I was hoping that The Mayor of Casterbridge would be as good as Tess was. And I didn't find it to be so. Although it was a good novel, not at the same level of Tess. And the reason for it was very simple. The Mayor of Casterbridge has so many plot developments, so many twists and turns as you read it, that this heavy emphasis on the plot sabotages, for me, the emotional power that the novel might otherwise have had. Thomas Hardy actually admits this. He admits that he may have overdone it in terms of the plot. You have to remember that before The Mayor of Casterbridge was bound in one volume as a novel, it was circulated in a magazine, and I think I don't know, weekly or monthly installments. You would get a new chapter every with every a new publication of the next installment of the magazine. And Thomas Hardy wanted to make sure that people would keep reading the next chapter, the next installment in the magazine. So he really emphasized the plot aspect to get people hooked on it. But as he himself acknowledges, he went kind of overboard on it. And it kind of degenerates to almost a Victorian soap opera at certain points, and that kind of messed it up for me. Tess of the D'Urbervilles and Jude, these are the two books I've read previously. They are written at a much slower pace, where there's a lot more. There are a lot more pauses between action, between plot development. You have more time to ruminate and to savor the novel. So you're much more emotionally involved with it without being distracted by all of these soap opera-like plot twists and turns. That's the main criticism I have of The Mayor of Casterbridge. And whenever Thomas Hardy doesn't pack every sentence, not every sentence, doesn't pack every page with plot twists, when he slows it down a little bit, the novel becomes more powerful. And whenever he continues with these intricate plot developments, it's kind of lost. He kind of loses that power for me. So here's the bare bones of the plot. From the very beginning of the novel, the first chapter, the first page, we come across a couple, a young man and a young woman, and a newborn babe. and they're wandering around a county of England called Wessex County. It's an imaginary county which Thomas Hardy has invented for the purpose of his novels, much like William Faulkner invented his fictitious county in Mississippi, I guess. It's kind of the same idea. So this couple is wandering about a particular county in England, and they come across a fairgrounds, and they go into one of the tents where an old lady is selling something called furmity, which is kind of a mixture of water and wheat and spices, and she laces the furmity upon request with a bit of rum. And so and the man in question that we meet with his wife and infant daughter, his name is Michael Henchard. And Michael Henchard is at the age of 21 is a very ill-tempered, mean-spirited, frustrated young man who is very upset about his hard life and the fact that he has no money, and he has to keep struggling to find work as a hay trusser, as a day laborer. He's very bitter about this, and he's very bitter about being saddled with a young wife and a newborn baby. And he's given to drink and ill temper when he drinks. And he's in this tent, and he's drinking this furmity laced with liquor, and he has one furmity bowl after another laced with the liquor, and he becomes increasingly more drunk. And at one point he announces to the people in the tent that he will sell his wife and his infant daughter to the highest bidder. And apparently he's pulled this kind of ill-tempered gimmick before. His wife is used to this kind of insulting behavior of his when he's drunk. And she says, no, not again, more or less, But he's very drunk and very nasty, and he keeps pressing the point. I will sell my wife, and I'll throw in the kid for you also for the right price. And he is so insistent, his wife gets disgusted with him and says, okay, you really want to go through with this? All right, if you do this, I'm going to leave. I'm just going to go with whoever is the highest bidder, and that's the last you're going to see of me. And what happens is a sailor who happens to be in the tent, actually bids on Michael Henchard's wife and daughter. And he's the highest bidder, the only bidder, I think. And what happens is this sailor goes away with the wife and daughter and leaves Michael Henchard high and dry, all by himself. So he got what he wanted. His family has now been auctioned off. Now, of course, the next day, when Michael Henchard sobers up, he realizes the despicable thing which he has done, and he regrets it immensely. And he spends the next year of his life wandering around Wessex County in search of his wife and his daughter, who he never finds. And after about a year or so, he gives up the search for them and for the sailor who bought them. And then you fast forward 20 years, 21 years, and and by the way, Michael Henchard is so upset at having done this that he makes a solemn vow in a church that he will not drink, he will not touch a drop of liquor for the next 21 years. To make amends for what he's done. And he picks 21 years because he was 21 years old when he conducted this auctioning off of his wife. So he says, I'm not going to drink for 21 years to make amends. And he does that. He remains sober. He remains abstinent for the next 21 years of his life. Okay, so now we fast forward 21 years, and Michael Henchard has now settled in a town called Casterbridge. And he has raised himself up by his own bootstraps from being a day laborer, a hay trusser, to becoming the mayor of Casterbridge. He becomes the most prominent personage in Casterbridge, and he also has a hay and corn business on the side as well. So he's the most prominent person there. The novel is called The Mayor of Casterbridge. And that is essentially the bare bones of the novel. And all of this stuff happens to Michael Henchard while he's mayor of Casterbridge. The first thing that happens to him is I'm not going to give you the plot. It's just so twisty and so long and convoluted, but you do have to know this. What happens is the wife that he auctioned off, Susan, finds out that the auction that was conducted, where she was sold off, she was so naive as to think that this was some kind of a legal binding contract, and she went off with the sailor, not realizing there was nothing legal about it at all, that she was still married to Michael Henchard. So she finally realizes, someone tells her that she still is married to Michael Henchard, not to the sailor who bought her. And she decides to go back to Casterbridge or searching for her husband, Michael Henchard, and just take it from there and see what happens. And I think she believes also that the sailor who bought her has been lost at sea also. So now the sailor who bought her is lost at sea, and she realizes that there was no real marriage there or no binding contract. So she says, let me go back with my daughter, who is now a young woman, 18 or so, Elizabeth. And they say, let me try to track down my ex-husband, who really always was my husband. Let me try to contact him and see whether he wants to see me again, whether he wants to resume living with me, whether he wants to just say, leave, don't bother me anymore. She doesn't know what to expect, and she comes back to Casterbridge, and she has contact. She has a meeting with Michael Henchard, her husband, and as it turns out, and the plot just develops from there, and this auctioneering off that happened 21 years ago comes back to haunt Michael Henchard and his wife and his daughter. There are a number of twists and turns where you don't really know if his daughter Elizabeth is really his daughter or whether it was the daughter of the sailor. This develops as the novel develops. As you can tell, it's going to become very, very complicated. It's going to become very, very soap opera-like. And Thomas Hardy is going to exploit this original auctioneering to the very end of the novel. There are several characters we meet, and it just goes on like that. And I'm not going to give you any more of the novel, of the plot, as I said, except to reiterate, that I personally find that all of these twists and turns really sabotage the emotional force that most of the novel could have had otherwise. It doesn't have the power that Tessa de D'Urbervilles and Judy Obscure have. Now, of course, the main character, Michael Henchard, the mayor of Casterbridge, is essentially a very mean-spirited, ill-tempered person. In spite of the fact that he becomes abstemious and he rises to the position of mayor, he is a very hard-hearted, ill-tempered man. He's not an evil man. He's just a very gruff, mean-spirited one. And he does do several things throughout. I mean, he's not an evil black and white cardboard character. He's just a very mean-spirited person. And this gets him into all sorts of trouble throughout the novel. And he has some redeeming qualities. He has some redeeming virtues. But the overall impression that one gets from reading the novel is that this is a very, very mean-spirited person. In a way, Thomas Hardy is taking the opposite extreme that he did with Tess. Tess is a virtuous person, a pure person, a pure-hearted person throughout the entirety of Tessa de D'Urbervilles, just as and that virtue of hers, that pureness of hers, comes to haunt her and becomes and ultimately is what destroys her. Well, in the same way, Michael Hintred's mean-spirited nature, in a way, kind of destroys him. So Thomas Hardy is approaching the character flaws or character virtues of a person in Victorian England, and runs with it and sees where it's going to take him, and that's it. So this is the bare bones of the plot. Now there are two things that I've taken away from reading the three novels that I have of Hardy: The Mayor of Casterbridge, Tess, and Jude the Obscure. And there are two pervasive themes. And the first is this: the destructive nature of Victorian morals is very prominent in the novels of Thomas Hardy. The gratuitously harsh, arbitrary Victorian customs can really screw a person up in 19th century Victorian England, or England at that time. For instance, if a woman has intimate relations with a man at that period of time, and she doesn't get married to the person, and if this gets out, well, that's the end of that person. That person will be ruined for life, that woman. She'll be destroyed, much as she was destroyed in Tess. It will come back, and it will stay with that person if they violate very rigid Victorian customs till the day they die. And Thomas Hardy is obviously appalled by this. And although he doesn't get on a soapbox and decry these antiquated and arbitrarily cruel Victorian customs, you can tell that he's pretty upset by them. So that's the first thing, the first theme that I see running throughout these novels. The second theme is just the fallible, flawed nature of man. Man, just by dint of of man, of being a human being on the face of the earth, is extremely flawed, and it gets him into all sorts of trouble. And when you combine that with these social mores of the time, when you put the two of them together, it's like putting fire and gasoline together, and it becomes very incendiary in a tragic way. And these are the two things that I see. Now, of course, social norms and social mores change from generation to generation, from zeitgeist to zeitgeist. I mean, nowadays, if you have intimate relations with a person without being married to them, it's not going to ruin you at all. We don't think one way or the other. Well, we don't basically think much of it. You're going to have a fulfilling life. Your life is still your own. However, although we don't have that anymore, we now have, we have a very, very rigid, destructive political climate right now. You can be destroyed by your political views. I mean, each generation, as I say, has their own societal norms and rigidity. However, the blighted nature of man doesn't change. This is a constant. This is an eternal theme. I mean, in Tess of the D'Urbervilles, at one point early on in the novel, Tess says to her younger brother, "We live on a blighted planet, B-L-I-G-H-E-T. Our planet is blighted." So Thomas Hardy has a very, very cosmic sense of the tragedy of being born and being marooned on this planet called Earth. And that combined with these rigid, crazy societal norms makes for life being a rather grim experience, punctuated occasionally by moments of happiness. You have to take the wisps of happiness where you can find them, because in general life is just a veil of tears. This is the sense you get from reading a Thomas Hardy novel. Life is extremely hard, harsh. Human beings are fallible. They are mean-spirited. They're subject to all of these different passions. They can't communicate properly. And as I say, when combined with the attitudes of the time, it leads to disaster. It's a very, very sobering, cosmic despair that Thomas Hardy writes about. Now, interestingly, The Mayor of Casterbridge was written several years before Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Tess of the D'Urbervilles, to me, is a much better written novel, but it has the same grimness in it that The Mayor of Casterbridge does. Maybe it's more grim, even more grim. Yes, it is more grim than The Mayor of Casterbridge to me. And then several years after Hardy wrote Tess, he wrote Jude the Obscure. Jude the Obscure was the last novel that Hardy wrote. If Tess of the D'Urbervilles is black, Jude the Obscure is even blacker. You can't imagine a blacker, more bitter pill than Jude the Obscure. It's almost as if the cosmic sense of despair that Hardy envisioned reaches its culmination in Jude the Obscure, and he can take it no further. Or else perhaps it's because his public was just so unreceptive to this kind of blackness that Hardy saw no point in continuing to write another novel. He'd kind of said it all, and it's a very grim picture of existence. So he said, that's enough. The public doesn't seem to really like this, and he devoted the rest of his life to writing poetry. So that's it. That's and I like this. I like this very, very cosmic perspective that Hardy takes upon earthly existence. The tragedy, the cosmic tragedy of being a human being on the face of the earth. This to me is timeless. It's just as timely now as it was 150 years ago. So I would say in conclusion that if you want to read I haven't read Far from the Madding Crowd. I've seen the movie. There are several versions. There are several versions of Tess of the D'Urbervilles. There are several versions of The Mayor of Casterbridge for TV or for movies. I haven't read the Far from the Madding Crowd, but I would say if you're going to read a Thomas Hardy novel, read Tess of the D'Urbervilles. To me, it's not hampered by this soap opera-like plot that you find in The Mayor of Casterbridge. Read Tess of the D'Urbervilles. And if you can stand it, try reading Jude the Obscure. But as I say, that's a very, very bitter pill to take. So that's it. That's my book review. Now I'm going to go on YouTube and I'm going to look at other people's podcasts of book reviews of The Mayor of Casterbridge, and I'm going to find out all of the things that I missed saying. So thank you very much. Take care.